Hello Mila, hello Jack. Hello everybody else who's watching, and welcome to Storytime with Grandad. Today's book is from Rosie and Jim, and it is Rosie and Jim and the Water Wizard. Rosie and Jim are two rag dolls. They live on a canal boat, the good boat Ragdoll. They travel along, looking out to see what they can see, and John steers the boat. When they find something interesting, John makes a story about it. Jim draws pictures in his drawing book, and Rosie collects things in her collecting bag. What do you think they'll find today? We're going up a hill, said Jim. A hill, said Rosie. What a noggin! How can you go up a hill on the water? The water's flat stuff. That's what John said Jim. I heard him. He said we had to go through a lock. He's a fizzpot, said Rosie. He'll never do it. The boat's too big to push up a hill. Let's go and see, said Jim. So they did. The ragdoll was going along the canal. Rosie and Jim saw some ducks. They saw a bridge. They saw a tall chimney. Then they saw a hill. That's it, said Jim. That's what? Said Rosie. The hill, said Jim. The one we're going up, said Rosie. Yes, said Jim, I think so. There are some gates, said Rosie, and they're shut. We'll have to go back. No hill for us. Hang on, said Jim. I think that's the lock that John was talking about. He's opening the gates. Look. What a gobbin, said Rosie. He must think he's a giant if he can lift us up that hill. But John opened the gates. There's more water the other side, said Jim. And more gates, said Rosie. John steered the boat between the gates. It went into a narrow place. There was a high wall of bricks on both sides. It's all wet and drippy and sploshy, said Jim. Now we're stuck, said Rosie. He's shutting the gates behind us. We'll never get out now. Don't you remember what John said about the locks, said Jim. John opens the first gate and the boat goes into the lock. He closes the gate and then lets water into the lock. The lock fills up with water and up goes the boat. John then opens the second gates and out we go, higher up. He's letting more water in, said Rosie. The water was gushing and whooshing in. It gurgled and wurgled all around the boat. The boat's having a bath, said Jim. And the bath's getting full, said Rosie. We're going up. They were. I can see over the walls, said Jim. I can see over the next gate, said Rosie. There's more canal up there. Look at Fizzleface, said Rosie. He's opening the next gate, said Jim. I'm flabbergasted, said Rosie. We're off again, said Jim. And we're higher up, said Rosie. He's done it. He's lifted us up the hill. Rosie and Jim, and the boat, and the sink, and the toilet, and the books, and the toys, and everything. It's time for John to write it down now, said Rosie. Jim said, let's have a look in John's book. Rosie said, we'll see what he's written about us. So they did. This is the story they read. Rosie and Jim and the Water Wizard. It was a wet day on the old canal. Rosie and Jim were cruising along in the good boat Ragdoll. They went under bridges and over bridges. They saw ducks and swans and other boats. Then... Stop, said Jim. Why, said Rosie. There's a gate, said Jim. Right across the water. Oh, fizzpot, said Rosie. That's where the Water Wizard lives. Will he let us in, said Jim. Yes, if you say the magic spell, said Rosie. We'll say it, if you know it, said Jim. Rosie said, Abracadabra, super glue, Open your gates and let us through. The gates opened with a gurgle and a swoosh. He lives in a wet house, said Jim. Of course he does, Noggin, said Rosie. He is a water wizard. The boat went in. The doors closed behind them. Now he's got us, said Rosie. What, gobbins? Say another spell, said Jim. Rosie said another spell. Argy bargy, puddings and pies, water wizard, make us rise. The water went bubble wobble, spuggle swish, spuggle swish. Somebody's turned the taps on, said Rosie. It's the water wizard, said Jim. He's having a bath. Up went the boat, up went Jim and Rosie and the sink and the cupboards and the beds. Up went everything. Then the water wizard opened his back door to let them out. Hooray, said Rosie and Jim. We're out of the water wizard's lock. But look, said Jim, there's another, and another, and lots of locks before we get to the top of the hill. Oh, fizzle fuzzle, said Rosie. But the water wizard came and picked up their boat. Look out, shouted Rosie, don't tip us out. The water wizard was very careful. He didn't tip the boat. He lifted it over his gates, over his locks, right to the top of the hill. Then he put it back on the water. Lovely, said Rosie. Now we can see for miles, said Jim. Thank you, water wizard, said Rosie. He's gone, said Jim. And he had. There was only a swish of water and a row of bubbles to show where he had been. Noggin, said Rosie. Time for tea, said Jim. The end. Goodbye, Mila. Goodbye, Jack. I'll see you soon. Goodbye, everybody. Bye.